At first glance, Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen seemed like Hollywood's ultimate golden couple. The picture of beauty, rebellion, and cinematic power. She was the elegant leading lady of Love Story, whose grace and charm had made her a cultural icon overnight. He was the king of cool, a rugged anti-hero who ruled the screen with his effortless masculinity and magnetic presence. When the two met, the chemistry was electric, so intense it set off a chain reaction that would change both of their lives forever. But behind the glamour, their marriage was far from the fairy tale that fans imagined. It was a relationship filled with jealousy, control, and the unrelenting pressure of fame. Steve McQueen, known for his fiery temper and need for dominance, clashed with Ali's independent spirit. He wanted a wife who would disappear into his world, not a star who could outshine him. And for Ali, who had sacrificed her career and identity to be with him, the dream of love soon turned into an emotional cage. Friends and insiders have since revealed the shocking truth about their marriage, a tale of passion and destruction that mirrored the dangerous intensity of McQueen's own films. What began as a whirlwind romance soon spiraled into a story of control, heartbreak, and ultimate loss. This is the untold story of how Ali MacGraw's marriage to Steve McQueen, one of Hollywood's most iconic unions, became a cautionary tale about love, fame, and the high price of surrendering yourself to someone you can never truly tame. It was 1972 when Ali MacGraw's life took a turn that would make headlines for decades. Fresh off the massive success of Love Story, one of the biggest box office hits of its era, she was Hollywood royalty. The world adored her delicate beauty, quiet sophistication, and emotional depth. She had what every actress of her generation dreamed of: fame, respect, and a career that promised longevity. Yet, at the height of that success, she met a man who would change everything: Steve McQueen. McQueen was at the top of his game. Known for Bullet, The Great Escape, and The Getaway, he wasn't just a movie star. He was an attitude, a lifestyle. His coolness wasn't an act, it was who he was. But with that came a darker side, a restless, unpredictable nature that made him both irresistible and dangerous. When Ali was cast opposite McQueen in The Getaway, the attraction was instantaneous. On screen, their chemistry was undeniable. Off screen, it was explosive. At the time, Ali was married to producer Robert Evans, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Evans adored her and had supported her acting career from the very beginning. But as filming began, rumors of tension on set started to spread. Cast members noticed how often Ali and Steve would linger after scenes, their conversations intense and private. By the time the movie wrapped, Evans knew the truth. His wife had fallen in love with another man. Ali's decision to leave Evans for McQueen shocked Hollywood. She walked away from a stable marriage, a thriving career, and the comfort of Beverly Hills luxury, all for a man whose reputation for chaos preceded him. Her friends warned her, telling her stories of McQueen's jealousy, his short temper, and his need to control those closest to him. But Ali, caught up in the whirlwind of passion, believed that love could tame him. "I thought I could fix him," she would later admit. "I was wrong." Their romance burned bright at first. McQueen was protective, attentive, and wildly romantic in ways that few men ever were. But as quickly as the honeymoon phase began, it started to fade. McQueen's insecurities began to surface. He didn't like the idea of Ali being in the public eye, much less starring alongside other men. Despite being married to one of the most famous actresses in America, he expected her to give up her career to stay home. And Ali, desperate to hold on to the relationship, did just that. She walked away from Hollywood, trading movie sets and red carpets for McQueen's isolated ranch life. Friends were stunned. This was the same woman who had once been the toast of Tinseltown, now spending her days cooking, cleaning, and waiting for her husband to come home from racing or filming. To outsiders, it looked like devotion, but to those who knew her best, it was the beginning of a slow, painful erasure of self. McQueen's controlling behavior only grew worse. He reportedly kept tabs on where Allie went, who she spoke to, and what she wore. Even the smallest disagreement could set him off. Allie often described walking on eggshells, afraid that the wrong word or gesture would trigger his anger. And while she still loved him deeply, the cracks in their marriage were beginning to show. What had started as a passionate affair between two of Hollywood's brightest stars was now turning into a silent struggle, one that would eventually destroy them both. As Allie would later reflect, it wasn't a love story. It was a collision. By the mid-1970s, the magic that had once defined Ally McGraw and Steve McQueen's romance was fading fast. What had begun as a fiery love affair between two Hollywood icons had now become an emotional tug-of-war between freedom and control. To the outside world, they were still the glamorous couple, beautiful, mysterious, and endlessly fascinating. But behind the closed doors of their home, Allie was slowly losing herself. Steve McQueen's career was soaring. He was known as Hollywood's rebel, the man who refused to play by the rules. But with his fame came a deep insecurity, a fear that the people closest to him would betray or outshine him. Allie, despite giving up her career to be his devoted wife, often found herself the target of that suspicion. McQueen wanted loyalty, but his definition of loyalty often meant isolation. He didn't want his wife at Hollywood parties, on red carpets, or in the company of other men. Allie's life began to revolve entirely around Steve. She woke up when he woke up, ate when he ate, and lived according to his moods. Her once bustling social life was gone. The woman who had once captured the hearts of millions now spent her days alone, surrounded by silence. Friends recalled that when they tried to visit, Steve would find excuses to turn them away. "She's tired," he'd say. "We need privacy." But in truth, privacy had become another word for control. Steve's possessiveness didn't come without its contradictions. While he demanded that Allie stay home and remain faithful, he continued his own habits of partying and casual affairs. The double standard was crushing. Still, Allie stayed. She loved him, perhaps too much, and hoped that her patience might change him. But instead of peace, her efforts only deepened his mistrust. McQueen's unpredictable temper became a defining feature of their marriage. Minor disagreements could escalate into shouting matches. He was known to disappear for days, leaving Allie terrified and alone, unsure of when or if he'd return. His obsession with speed, risk, and danger bled into their home life. Even when he wasn't on a racetrack or film set, he lived like every moment might be his last. Despite everything, Allie never publicly spoke against him during their marriage. In interviews, she would praise Steve's talent and charisma, even as she quietly endured the chaos behind the scenes. Hollywood gossip magazines, unaware of the full truth, continued to portray them as the ultimate power couple, two stars who had it all. But inside, Allie was unraveling. Her friends began to worry. One close confidant later recalled that Allie seemed like a ghost of her former self. "She used to laugh so easily," the friend said. "Now she looked like someone who had forgotten how." The pressure of trying to please Steve, of constantly proving her love, was wearing her down. Things reached a breaking point when Allie started to express a desire to return to acting. She missed the work, the creativity, the independence, the sense of purpose. But when she mentioned it to Steve, he reacted with anger. "You don't need Hollywood," he reportedly snapped. "You've got me." It was a sentence that said it all. To Steve, love meant possession. To Allie, it was beginning to feel like a prison. The tension became unbearable. Even McQueen's friends noticed that his volatility had worsened. Some attributed it to his growing paranoia and heavy substance use, while others believed it came from a deep fear of losing control over the one woman he truly loved. Whatever the reason, the damage was done. By 1977, their marriage was hanging by a thread. The passion that had once drawn them together had turned into something darker, something destructive. Ali, who had sacrificed her career, her independence, and her peace of mind for love, was beginning to realize a painful truth. No amount of devotion could fix a man who didn't want to be saved. And for Steve McQueen, the man the world called the King of Cool, his kingdom was starting to crumble from within. By 1978, the cracks in Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen's marriage were no longer hidden behind Hollywood smiles. What had once been passion now felt like punishment. Their love story, which had captured the imagination of millions, was quietly unraveling in the isolation of their California ranch. For Ali, every day felt like a balancing act, trying to keep peace with a man she still loved but no longer recognized. Steve's paranoia had grown worse. His fame had made him distrustful of almost everyone around him, including his wife. He'd go through her phone records, question her friends, and accuse her of infidelity with little to no reason. Even a simple trip to the grocery store could spark suspicion. He had become, as one close friend described, a man at war with himself. Ali tried to stay patient. She believed that beneath his anger and jealousy was the same man she had fallen in love with. The daring, unpredictable, magnetic Steve McQueen, who once made her feel like the only woman in the world. But with every passing month, the warmth faded further away. McQueen's temper, fueled by insecurities and heavy drinking, turned their home into a battlefield. There were moments of tenderness, brief glimpses of the old Steve, when he'd surprise her with a motorcycle ride or a quiet dinner under the stars. But they were fleeting, like sunlight breaking through a storm. More often, the air between them was heavy with resentment. Ali later said she often cried in secret, not out of fear, but from heartbreak. He didn't know how to love without control, she confessed years later. And I didn't know how to stop loving him, even when it was destroying me. As McQueen's personal struggles deepened, his professional life began to suffer too. Once the highest-paid actor in the world, he started rejecting roles and isolating himself from Hollywood. He grew increasingly obsessed with privacy, motorcycles, and speed, anything that could distract him from his inner turmoil. Meanwhile, Ali was suffocating. Her world had become small, and she missed the version of herself she used to be. The confident woman who could command a film set, not just her husband's moods. The breaking point came when Ali expressed interest in returning to acting. She received a few offers, including roles that could have reignited her career, but McQueen refused to support her. He accused her of wanting fame more than love, of trying to abandon him just when he needed her most. The arguments turned explosive. "You wanted me to give up everything," she shouted during one confrontation, "and I did. But you're never satisfied." Those who witnessed the final months of their marriage described it as a slow-motion collapse. McQueen, unwilling to admit his faults, began pushing her further away, almost daring her to leave. Ali, after years of sacrificing her dreams, finally realized she had nothing left to give. In 1978, after 5 turbulent years, Ali MacGraw walked away. The woman who had once given up her career for love finally chose herself. She packed her bags and left their home, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. "It wasn't dramatic," she said later. "There were no tears, no yelling, just silence. The kind of silence that tells you it's over." The divorce was finalized soon after, marking the end of one of Hollywood's most talked-about relationships. McQueen, true to form, refused to speak about it publicly. But those close to him said he was devastated. Beneath his cool exterior, he was a man who didn't know how to handle loss. For Ali, the aftermath was bittersweet. She had her freedom, but she also carried the scars of the relationship that had consumed her youth and career. When asked years later if she regretted marrying McQueen, she hesitated before answering. "No," she said softly. "I loved him. He changed my life. But I also learned that love isn't supposed to hurt like that." It was a moment of quiet truth, a recognition that even the most powerful love stories can end. Not in betrayal, but in exhaustion. After the divorce, Ally McGraw found herself standing at a crossroads. The woman who had once lived in the shadow of Hollywood's king of cool was now forced to rebuild her life from the ground up. Her marriage to Steve McQueen had left her emotionally drained, financially uncertain, and professionally adrift. But beneath the heartbreak, something unexpected began to emerge, a quiet strength that would define the rest of her life. Ally returned to acting, though the road back was far from easy. Hollywood, ever fickle, had already moved on. The roles that once came easily were now being offered to younger faces, and her time away from the screen had made her seem out of touch to casting directors. But Ally didn't care about fame anymore. For the first time in years, she was living life on her own terms, no longer answering to a husband, a studio, or the expectations of a glamorous public image. She moved to New Mexico, far from the chaos of Los Angeles, and began to focus on her emotional recovery. It was there that she rediscovered herself, not as an actress or a movie star, but as a woman. She embraced a simpler lifestyle, filled with yoga, meditation, and art. "I had to find peace again," she once said. "After Steve, I didn't want the noise anymore." Meanwhile, Steve McQueen was fighting battles of his own. Not long after their split, he was diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive form of cancer. The man who had once seemed invincible, the daredevil who raced cars, defied death, and commanded the screen with pure intensity, was suddenly vulnerable. In his final years, McQueen retreated from the public eye, seeking alternative treatments in Mexico and reflecting on his tumultuous life. Despite their painful past, Ally never spoke ill of him. In fact, when news of his illness reached her, she was deeply affected. Friends say she wanted to visit him, but McQueen, ever private, refused most visitors. Still, she kept in touch through mutual friends, quietly sending messages of care and forgiveness. When McQueen passed away in 1980 at just 50 years old, Ally was devastated. "He was the love of my life," she admitted years later. "Even with all the pain, I've never loved anyone the way I loved Steve." After his death, the truth about their relationship began to emerge more openly. Biographers, co-stars, and close friends described it as one of the most passionate, yet toxic, unions in Hollywood history. They were two opposites drawn together by an irresistible magnetism but destroyed by the same fire that made them so electric. Steve's need for control and Ally's willingness to surrender for love had created a cycle neither could escape. But with time came perspective. In later interviews, Ally reflected on her marriage not with anger, but with understanding. "Steve was complicated," she said. "He was damaged in ways I didn't understand back then. He wasn't cruel because he wanted to be. He was scared of losing control, scared of being vulnerable. I wish I'd known how to help him, but I also had to help myself." That sense of peace became the hallmark of her later life. Ally eventually became an advocate for animal welfare and women's empowerment, using her platform to speak about the importance of self-worth and independence. She often said that her marriage to McQueen taught her the hardest but most valuable lesson of all: that love cannot thrive where fear exists. In the years since, both she and Steve have become larger-than-life figures, forever linked in the public imagination. The Getaway remains a cinematic time capsule of their real-life chemistry, a reminder of what drew them together and what ultimately tore them apart. Today, when fans revisit their story, they see more than just Hollywood romance. They see two flawed, deeply human souls trying to love each other in a world that never gave them the space to heal. Steve McQueen may have been the king of cool, but to Ali MacGraw, he was simply Steve, the man who taught her how dangerous love could be and how powerful it is to finally walk away.